Welcome to Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure. I'm Rob Wilson.
And I'm Tony DeQuano.
What movie are we doing this time, Tony?
The 1996 classic starring Paxton, Helen Hunt, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Twister, directed by Jan de Bont, following his success with Speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, and apps kind of a nice camp classic in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And it stormed the theaters back in 1996, so to speak.
I see what you did there. Yes.
No, it was like, back when Helen Hunt was big sitcom star, right? Mad About You.
Mad About You.
Yeah.
With Paul
Can't think
Reiser.
of any movies before this, she would go on to win an Oscar prize as good as it gets the following year.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Paxton was Bill Paxton, So,
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Bill Paxton.
Did you see it in theaters?
I did not see it in theaters.
I did see it in theaters. I remember
Okay.
seeing it with my dad. And for me, this is a movie that I really associate a lot with like marketing,
Okay.
because I had a lot of images of the TV spots, right, with Philip Seymour Hoffman and his character. It's coming!
I love his character in this movie.
So, like,
Philip Seymour Hoffman was
such a
amazing in this movie.
Great, I can see why the use of the TV spots. It's a moment that stands out. And,
Yeah.
I remember the trailer, which is funny. You look at the trailer because, like, it's basically this is like when trailers are actually really, really good,
Yeah.
because like it hooks you. It doesn't give that much away.
Yeah.
It's
90s movie
basically
trailers were
just that-
great.
The trailer is basically just an opening prologue,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get a little bit of flying debris at the end of it.
Yeah.
And so you have to do with the deep voiceover.
Yes.
In a time.
Don LaFontaine. In a world where tornadoes terrorize your town.
But yeah, we wanted Twister, and I think after The Mummy, we're trying to think about it, and I don't know, we started thinking, oh yeah, there's like the Twisters movie coming out. Why not do Twister? It's a movie that I think has kind of earned its spot in movie lore, right?
Yep.
And enough to get a kind of, I guess it's supposed to be a sequel reboot type of thing. That's how they do everything these days, right? Now, over a quarter of a century later, I guess, almost 30 years later. And yeah. And it's funny, it's one of those movies that kind of start kicking off the movie season from Memorial Day to like early May.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, other than almost 10 years, my teenage years and early 20s, I was born and raised in Tornado Alley.
Right.
So
Yeah.
born in Texas, grew up in Kansas, and then moved
Yeah.
out to Virginia
Well,
for my teenage years, and then back in Kansas now.
like growing up on the East Coast, like serious tornadoes like that, you don't really know if it's
Mm-hmm.
barely a thing.
Yeah, I mean, on the East Coast, you get hurricanes.
Yeah.
But-
And like sometimes hurricanes can spawn tornadoes.
Yes.
But
Yes, they can. It's funny. Growing up in Kansas, there were tornadoes all over the place, right? But I never saw one. There was never never one in my immediate vicinity. I didn't see my first tornado till I moved to Virginia.
yeah. Well, so my grandmother, my mom's mother, she grew up in South Dakota. So she had definitely had experience with tornadoes.
Yeah.
I never really had much experience. So
Yeah.
back to the movie though. So I'd seen this. I think I saw it opening weekend with my dad, Preston Town Center. I was really excited to see it, and I really liked it. I probably watched it a bunch in middle school and high school and college, and watching it now probably the first time in about 10 years.
Okay.
I've had the DVD for a long time, but I haven't really sat down and watched it in a while. And it's still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about it is that it kind of has this concept about the science of studying the tornadoes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it doesn't really commit that much to it because it
No,
doesn't
it
want to
doesn't.
get that deep into
Yeah.
the science.
Yeah.
It doesn't want to get into these big plot holes.
No. It's
It's
a movie
smart enough.
about tornadoes, and that's it.
It's smart enough to do that.
Yes. I mean, the characters know what they're talking about, but there's so much going on, so much excitement in each of the tornadoes are chasing, that you don't really need them to elaborate on what they know about these things. You know that they know it, and that's enough.
You almost forget about the Dorothy machine
Mm-hmm.
for like a good half of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, they're trying to put that into a tornado.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a MacGuffin, I guess, in a way. I if you want to call it that, if you don't want to, that's fine too. But
yeah, it is kind of. It is kind of, yeah.
But it's ultimately just about showing off really cool effects and throwing debris, including farm animals, at people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I haven't seen this movie in probably 20 years before I watched it for the podcast. So it was great getting back into it and remembering what I had forgotten about it. But yeah, so first time I saw this one, it wasn't really a super memorable time that I first saw. I think I watched it in like 99, 2000, somewhere in there.
Okay.
It was one of those ones that, Jenny had friends over, and so I joined them for a movie.
Yeah.
Watched the movie in the basement. And so, I was in high school, I think it was, when I saw it the first time. But I do remember when it came out in theaters. So Jenny, my sister, went with, I don't remember if it was a youth group thing. I think it was a youth group thing. But it was either that or it was just her and a bunch of friends went and saw it in the theater. And there were tornadoes that night in the area. So they were watching Twister while tornadoes were going on. And funny thing with this viewing of it, for me, when I watched it the other day, I watched Twister and then there were tornadoes.
Well, it's
and right nearby, like right around me. So I think I caused the tornadoes because I watched Twister. And it's funny, like tonight, we're recording this episode about Twister. They're calling for severe storms later. So
yeah.
Oh, yes.
We'll see.
Late spring into summertime in Kansas.
Yeah.
Good thing
this
I love
movie,
storms.
however, does not take place in Kansas.
No, it doesn't.
It takes place in Oklahoma.
It takes place in Oklahoma, which is just south of Kansas. They do mention Wichita, though.
No, most of the movie was filmed in Kansas also. There is a scene that is not. We'll get to that scene. But I was kind of looking at some of the production of it because it's interesting. Like, it's Don DeBont. He directed Speed, right? And then he was a big cinematographer for action movies in like the 80s. And I think it's funny because like Speed and Twister are somewhat similar movies in that it's obviously very action oriented, right?
Yep.
All around a single concept.
Yep.
And it does a very good job. They both do a very good job of making that action count.
Yeah.
But after this, his career really kind of fell off a cliff because his next movie was Speed 2 Cruise Control.
Hey, that's a classic. Okay, fine, it's not. But
like, we've already seen Under Siege, okay?
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones and Steven Seagal have already handled this.
You can't call a movie Speed when the vehicle where all the action takes place on is
a cruise
going like 5 knots.
Yeah. It's not a jet ski.
No. Yeah.
Anyway,
although they did that whole crash at the end, they did like do that practically. They built the entire front end of a cruise ship and ran it into a village.
Well, so that's the thing about, like, apparently a lot of the crew members and cast members were really not happy with him during Twister because of how demanding he was about the sequences. And it shows how well it's done. Like, you get, in terms of all these multiple shots and how to have everything set up to be as like kind of realistic as and intense as possible, essentially.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is, it's Michael Crichton is credited with the screenplay, but there's a bunch of other people that actually worked on it as well. So at the time, it was the highest paid script in Hollywood history. Right?
Really? Did not know that.
And Spielberg was presented with the idea of it, and he went to Michael Crichton because the two of them had recently worked on Jurassic Park together.
Yep.
Right? And so Crichton was going to do the script with his wife. And then they started talking to the directors, including James Cameron and Robert Zemeckis. And then Don DeBont came onto it because he was going to do a Godzilla movie, but he left the Godzilla movie.
Would that have been the Matthew Broderick one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Roland Emmerich.
Good old Roland Emmerich. Which we'll get into Roland Emmerich when we do, a few movies from now.
But Joss Whedon ended up doing rewrites on the script.
Huh.
And then there were more rewrites done after that. So it's a whole interesting kind of history to the production of it. But
Interesting.
not enough about some of that backstory. So, but the movie, I think it starts off so well because it's just, you see kind of like this rural countryside of like Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of tranquil, and then you can see the storms like building up, and then it's nighttime,
and that's how it happens. That's how tornadoes happen. Like it's calm, and then all of a sudden it's not.
Now it's nighttime, and like it's in this farmhouse, and they already tell you like it's what 1969, like the late 60s, or something like that, right? So it's kind of like little box set TV, and the guys just watching the news, and it's all about the weather reports, and then they say they have confirmation of a tornado, right? And he and his wife go get their daughter, and she's sleeping because it's like the middle of the night,
and they leave the dog in the bed.
The dog, poor dog, not the poor dog, because the girl is wise enough, like you gotta
to call for the dog, and the dog comes running, but.
It's well done because, like, they're running out of the house. They see lightning and, there's a bunch of wind. And they go down on the storm cellar, right? And for those of you that live, like, out in the country, particularly the Midwest and the Great Plains, especially if you live more like a farmhouse like that, you know all about storm cellars, right? Not just a basement that you have. Yeah. It's, especially if you live in an older, like, farmhouse.
Yeah.
Right? They get in and they close the door, and then, like, it's the wind and it's rattling, and I will never get this part, but he goes to try to keep it closed, and then he's holding on to it, and then I have to kind of laugh at it.
He's holding on to the door, trying to hold it closed. The door gets ripped off his hinges and flies into the tornado with him still holding on to it like he's riding a big sail. Whereas if he would have just stayed down there with his family, he would have survived.
Because, like, the girl, like, she steps out. There's a little, they got a little window.
The
up
mom
there,
and the daughter,
and she's looking.
The wife and the daughter they come out and they're like in the open, looking up, watching this guy fly away. If he would have stayed down there, then he would have been fine, whether there was a door on the storm shelter or not.
Who knows? He might have pulled a Swayze. And like that was his goal, was to ride,
maybe
on a door.
Maybe. I never thought of it that way.
He's off somewhere else now, living the good life.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't die. Maybe he rode off into the sunset on that tornado. Maybe he, now that you mention it, pulling a Swayze would have a double meaning here. Because, of course, you're referring to Point Break, where Swayze wanted to ride that giant storm at the end, ride the waves. But also, if you remember, do you remember the movie Tall Tale?
Yes.
Swayze played Pecos Bill, a cowboy famous for riding tornadoes.
There's another movie with that would. Yeah. So, by the way, it's only like 5 minutes in the movie, and we just told you someone died.
But that's the 5 minutes.
There will be spoilers.
Yes. Spoiler alert. We are going to be talking about this entire movie, beginning, middle, and end. So if you have not seen the movie, you don't want to be spoiled, pause the podcast, watch the movie, come back and listen. If you don't mind spoilers, keep on listening. But you have been warned.
There's not that many spoilerish things.
No.
This movie.
I mean, it's a tornado movie, so you would imagine at least one person is going to get sucked up into the tornado. So.
Yes. Anyway,
but then it's also brought to our attention that this tornado at the beginning of the movie is an F5 tornado, which
did they say that on the broadcast? I know it said later in the movie.
Yeah, it said later in the movie. I don't think it's actually said in the broadcast because it wasn't a rating yet.
Yeah, I didn't think
they hadn't recorded an F5 tornado yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was in the broadcast. But yeah, we don't find that out until later when they're eating dinner at Meg's house.
At Meg's house in Lakita, which is a real town, which I like that they actually used the name of a real small town in western Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I get, like it's easy enough to use places like, Wichita or Norman or Stillwater or Lubbock, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Small cities, college towns, but like a very small town like that.
Yeah, it would be like if it took place in Kansas and they mentioned Hayes.
Yeah. So anyway, we're not to Wakita yet.
No, that's not for a little bit. But
but we jump into present day, right? And you have the classic shot, little kind of classic shot, and some of these things where you have the little satellite
mm-hmm. going through space
you go
with that mid '90s CGI.
You go into a command center, and all these people are working. And it's like the National Weather Center for severe. It's the National Severe Storm Center, I guess. Actually, they're looking at all these things like, oh, it's going to be a very busy day. And
yes,
all these people exist is like, it's like probably the second unit director filming like these few like 2-3 scenes. So
it's also important to note that this entire movie takes place over the course of about a day and a half.
Yes,
maybe 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, like basically a day and a half. Yeah, there's like one night you see in there, and then you get into the next night. Because we get there, it's like the morning, and you see this massive group of like storm chasers and scientists. Really, I guess one scientist. Really, she's got her tech people, and everyone else helps her. Played by Helen Hunt.
Helen Hunt playing Dr. Joe Harding, who it's quickly revealed that she was the little girl in the opening scene.
Yes.
So her dad is the one that went on to try to become Swayze.
So then, we also then get introduced to her ex-husband, not technically ex-husband, because that is a plot point that they are in the middle of getting a divorce, but Bill the Extreme Harding.
Yes.
Because Billy is the extreme.
Billy the Extreme.
That's so 90.
Yes.
But he is also a meteorologist, like Harding. Right?
Now, he has actually gotten a job as a TV meteorologist, as a weatherman.
They don't really say where.
No,
right?
They don't.
How do they ever say where? I think it's kind of important because riding along with him is his wife, Dr.
His fiance.
Here.
His fiance.
Yes, fiance, because they need a divorce.
Yeah.
They need a divorce.
They're going to meet up with Joe so that she can sign the last bit of papers for their divorce.
Now she does not know that Melissa's coming. Dr. Melissa Reeves, who is a therapist, and we will discover later she is a sex therapist.
Yeah, but no, not Dr. Ruth.
But it seems later.
Although they should have. This was like Dr. Ruth's heyday, so they should have put her in the movie somewhere. She should have had a cameo or something.
Yes. She plays Melissa's mother.
Yes, that would have been perfect. Yes.
But the thing I get about it is that later in the movie you can see like this whole idea of tornadoes. Not just tornadoes. I guess, the storm chasing itself seems really new to her, right? Which is, like, even if she's like doesn't know people and do it, like if she lived in like Oklahoma with him, she would probably understand that. Yeah, no, there's people that go out, try to chase storms, and either get pictures or study them, right? It should not be a novel concept. But they're in a nice new red truck, also, by the way.
Yes, that's.
So I get, but it seems like they drove from some place kind of close and lived not that far. I don't know. It's not that important.
Yeah. So yeah, Bill just got a brand new 1996. I'm guessing because they didn't say what year it was, but it was the new truck. He got a new Dodge Ram, a red Dodge Ram that had a camper shell on it.
It did.
At the beginning of the movie.
Later.
Yeah. And then they just kind of throw it out. They kind of leave it on the side of the road.
It doesn't really matter later.
No, it doesn't. But they kind of just leave that camper shell on the side of the road. But we'll get to that. But
all the people that are there, like she's got, crew. It's probably like about a dozen people, right? And they're all kind of surprised to see them. You got, Dusty,
played by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah,
playmovie brilliantly by Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It's funny. Like when I first saw this, I was like, oh yeah, he's kind of the cool character of the movie. And then like after seeing a few things with him, and more like the early 90s, early 2000s, I saw Twister again. Like, oh wow, he was in Twister, playing a completely different type of character. Yeah, he plays it really well. He creates an actual character out of us. Like, and that's the thing about this movie. It's like these characters aren't meant to be super deep.
Yeah.
No, like, it's funny. Like, you talk about, like, we'll get into it in a minute, I guess. But everyone else is like kind of like, oh yeah, he's back. We also get to see Rabbit, right, played by Alan Ruck,
who was also in Speed.
Who's the navigator, right? And I guess, like, today, like, it almost seems like his character would almost be unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was the map guy.
They were just it's like, no, they got GPS for that now. You can stay home, Rabbit.
Yeah.
He gets mad because his assistant,
because Alan
creases.
Because Alan folded the map instead of rolling it, and there was a crease going right through Wichita.
You can't find Bob's Road, though. It's like, it must be Bob's Road. He knows a road that drives through a cornfield.
Yeah.
And this other big road later, like, you can't find it.
Yeah.
And anyhow.
And by the way, looks like the storm's starting up. The wind's picking up out here. So hopefully the power will stay on long enough for us to finish the episode.
Everyone's like, eventually, like, he leaves Melissa with Dusty, and he goes to find Joe, and and she's kind of happy to see him, right? And you can tell this, she's a good Helen's a good actress, right?
Yeah.
She has, like, she's excited to see him, she wants to see him, right? And they're kind of talking about, like, it's going to be a good day for storms, right? Yeah. And then start trying to talk about the divorce papers.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you haven't signed all these. And they go back and forth. And then she finds out Melissa's there, right? So she has to go meet Melissa, right? And this is where it gets back to, right? Like, you kind of have this triangle thing going on, and you kind of know how it's going to end,
yeah.
right? But, like, the tension never gets that high in it. Again, it's not supposed to be about the love triangle.
No, it's really not. But yeah, so they get word of a tornado that's gonna.
Well, even before that, that's when he doesn't realize that this theory of theirs to study the inside of a tornado.
Yes.
Using devices to send. They're gonna, send information to the computers. Right?
Yeah. So Bill invented this device. He had this idea for this device, and Joe made it happen. Right. That he called Dorothy, where it was this. Basically, all these hundreds of little, like, ball-shaped sensors that sat inside this big tub. And the idea was they would place it in the path of a tornado. And as the tornado would pass over it, it would release these sensors up into the center of the tornado.
And then you can actually get real readings inside the tornado.
Yes, because nobody's ever been able to get readings from the inside of a tornado before. So, you get, wind speed, direction, temperature variations, pressure variations, all that kind of stuff.
The idea is that if you can kind of know more of how a tornado acts and behaves, you can get out warnings to people a lot quicker. Give them more time to get to safety.
Yeah. And we know that Joe has a personal stake in this because of the beginning of the movie.
Her dad went through a tornado.
Because they had very little warning before that tornado hit.
And then that's when they get the notice that there is going to be a touchdown near where they're going to be, or where they're situated. They all get up and they load up all this stuff, and they drive off in a little caravan.
Yeah, and Bill is going to go the other way. Bill's going to leave, but then at the last minute decides to follow along with him.
Well, because he didn't get the paper signed.
Yes, because he didn't get the paper signed. So he has to go back and meet up with Jo so she'll sign the papers. So Melissa kind of just gets dragged into all this. She's in the truck when Bill decides to follow the storm chasers.
It's like,
his old group.
First she's like, oh, I think this is kind of exciting.
She doesn't think that for long.
She's a therapist. She's just probably, it's curiosity, right? You're trying to understand, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so while they're riding to try to intercept this tornado, this other caravan with a black V.
Yes, a bunch of black Dodge Grand Caravans.
They got the Ram, they got the Caravan.
Yes. Bunch of black 1996 Dodge Grand Caravans.
This is the problem, though, because they chose the Dodge Ram. No one really, it's Dodge, whatever, right? Yeah. They could have picked, a Chevy Silverado.
They could have.
And then there's a bunch of black Ford Aerostars.
Yeah. 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 But no, when I was a kid, we had that van. We had 96 Dodge Grand Caravan, but the one that we had was purple, not black.
Anyway.
So I saw those vans driving down the road. I'm like, wow, that's what I drove. That's what I rode to school in every day.
And then,
then I drove it to school a few times after I was able to drive too. After I got my license.
Passed by Billy, and we see Carrie Always.
Yes, Carrie Always. Dr. Jonas Miller.
Like Jonas.
Who we find out is an old colleague of Joe and Bill's.
They worked in the three of them worked in the same lab.
Yes, they all worked in the same lab, but Jonas,
he got corporate funding.
Jonas ended up getting corporate funding, and he's in all this tornado chasing for the glory, whereas Joe and Bill are in it for the science.
Even though Bill is the extreme.
Yes, even though Bill is the extreme.
And so he kind of like runs Bill off the road.
He doesn't kind of run Bill off the road. He does run Bill off the road.
And what's weird is like you actually don't get the tornado next year, right? Like they go to some little town and there's a gas station.
Yeah.
He's getting a new tire.
Yeah.
And it'll look like diner.
Yeah,
right?
because he blew a tire. So he's not getting a new one. He's getting his tire repaired. But it's going to take the guy about 15, 20 minutes to repair the tire.
15 minutes, yes.
And you take him, about 15 minutes tops to repair the tire.
And then, like, after he, like, drops the truck off with this repair shop, right? He sees Jonas, like, he's filming something. And then Jonas is talking about something. And it's like, he realizes that Jonas has stole his idea.
Mm-hmm. Because Jonas is talking about a machine that's exactly like Dorothy.
And
only the sensors in his machine are little cubes, not spheres.
There's no patent yet, so like, they could just be spheres, and it would be okay.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to look like he's plagiarizing something.
Yeah, you got to change it just enough. Because cubes fly so much better than spheres.
Yeah, I mean, you've always seen cube-shaped hot air balloons, right?
And baseballs are base cubes, right? Yeah. Cubes are way more aerodynamic than spheres.
Could have been anyway. They've done a pyramid, a cone, cone, right? Because a tornado is like, a
tornado's like an upside down cone. But so
they have little fisticuffs, right?
So Bill sees him and like runs over to him and sort of shoves him and starts yelling at him that he stole his idea and all this right in the middle of the interview.
Dorothy, you stole her. Like unrealized idea. Unrealized.
Yeah.
Like you don't really get a whole lot of lines from Carrie Always in this movie.
No, but you get a few.
Yeah.
And it's always it's always fun because he puts on sort of a southern accent on it too.
Yeah.
British Carrie Always.
It's like, like on like anyway. So you see him later, like in the diner, and he's talking to Joe, and he's trying to understand what Joe and Billy are going to do, right? And Joe is talking with Melissa about this, and it's like, oh yeah, he always follows Billy. Like,
yep,
he's always looking to see what Billy's going to do. And then I always think it's kind of funny because like they kind of talk about Billy together, and then the waitress that's pouring the coffee is just kind of looking at it. She's chewing her gum. She's like. Yep. She's waiting for the fight.
Yep.
And, they get their drinks, and then Billy's still outside, and Dusty comes out. Bill's just kind of looking at the sky, at the wind, and got the dirt. He looks like Russell Crowe before he's about to kill a bunch of people in battle.
Yep. And he's like, it's coming.
And then they get they finally get the other confirmation on the radar and all head out, and then Jonas, she's all like, "We're gonna head out too."
Yep. And Melissa puts because Melissa went to get
2 lemonades,
Bill a lemonade and herself a lemonade, and she goes and puts them on top of the truck,
and
then
Bill decides to ride with Joe.
Yes, in the lead truck,
and she's like, you follow behind, and she puts them up, and she gets in, and she drives off,
and they're still on the roof of the truck, and they fall off as she drives off.
And, they finally they're driving along, and they start arguing with each other. And obviously there's a reason why their marriage fell apart.
Yeah. And I love it because Bill's driving, and at one point he's like, he looks at Joe, he's like, "Do you want to drive?" He's like, "Yes."
Like, the other parts, like, they're trying to do some small talk. It's like, so, where do you meet her? At the station? She's like, no. She's like, what's she do? She's a therapist. And then, like, yours? And then I love how, like, the two people, they're being heard over little CBs, right? And then finally, like, I like the chick that's like, I think they're getting better at this.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's a tornado that catches down, and one of the drivers is like, are you going to wrap this up, or are we going to try to catch this tornado?
Yeah. I love that.
And I just love it because they go off, and it's like, this small road they drive off of, and like, you see it off to their left, right? Like, he gets a brilliant idea that there's this massive irrigation ditch.
Yes, so he drives into the ditch and tries to follow the tornado down there. And then there's a little bridge going across the irrigation ditch.
I don't know what this bridge is there for. For
people to walk across when they're working the field?
Or,
I don't know.
But if they're in the field and they need something to be under if a tornado hits.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, so this bridge is too low for the truck to be able to fit under because it's not a deep irrigation ditch. So and then, the tornado ends up changing directions and is coming right at them, so they need to get out of there. And they're kind of stuck in this ditch, so they can't turn off anywhere because it's high enough to where they can't just turn out of it, but it's low enough to where that bridge is not going to be high enough for them to get under it.
Yeah, no. So and they don't even have time to even set up the sensors, right?
Yeah.
Turn everything on, and and so they get under and they hold on.
Well, they crash into the bridge.
Yeah,
they crash the truck into the bridge.
Like, okay, you could do that, and they hold on, and it's an intense tornado. It's not like a huge tornado, but it's still a friggin' tornado.
Yeah.
That's about to hit them directly. They hold on together, and it's windy and all that, and passes through and continues down, right? Just love that. Like, it's interesting because, like, I guess despite all of this, like, everyone else is still driving.
And also, I mean, so the tornado goes right over them, and it like rips up the planks from the bridge and all that stuff. They're holding on to the posts under the bridge, and this is not the last tornado they'll be in the middle of in this movie.
No. No. The next one would be a lot larger.
Yes.
And then it goes through, they survive, and then Joe looks, it's like, where's my truck? And then it just drops right in front of Melissa. And Bill's truck, right?
Yep.
And she's like, ah! Right, and then everyone's like, are you all right? I love Dusty's like,
I love Dusty in this movie. Philip Seymour Hoffman was brilliant in this movie.
Right, and like, obviously she's in shock because a truck just dropped out of the sky in front of her. And she's a good job of avoiding it and then not going back down to that ditch herself.
Yeah, not wrecking her fiance's brand new truck.
So, and, Bill, he's being very reassuring, and I love how and Dusty's like, well, at least Dorothy flew. Because Dorothy was in the back of the truck, right? All the sensors and everything's all over the road.
Yeah. So when the truck took off, so did Dorothy. Now they hadn't. If they had activated Dorothy before the truck was taken away, then it may have worked, and they may have gotten their readings inside a tornado, and then the movie would be over.
Yeah. Be happy, and Bill would go home with Melissa.
Yeah.
Not Joe.
And be able to enjoy his new truck a little bit longer than this one day.
That's right. Jonas would have failed, and we won't get to that. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. We'll get to that when it happens. But
we won't get to see the next tornado because, and then Joe, they realized, we need some other truck to be able to hold that Dorothy we want to put up
be able
in the funnel.
To take Dorothy.
And she wants to know about the insurance coverage.
Yes, and he's got liability only on his brand new Dodge Ram.
I think, it would probably be kind of hard to, get a lot more coverage when he's like, yeah, I plan to drive this into a path of a tornado.
Yeah. Now, when he bought the truck, I'm sure he wasn't intending to drive that truck into a tornado. I'm sure he got it just as a daily driver kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so then there wouldn't have been any issues with insurance.
Right. He's just worried about some jackass that's going to run into him at a traffic.
Yeah.
So
they take Bill's truck, and Melissa rides with Dusty.
Melissa rides in the back, right? Melissa rides with Dusty.
No. At this point, no. Yeah, Melissa was in the back. Yeah,
Melissa
was in the back of the truck, in the back seat of the truck. Yes, it was an extended cab, and so she's riding in the back seat.
And we get a tornado touchdown, right? And this one's kind of closer towards this lake or pond area, and this is where you see
on their way over there, Melissa gets a phone call.
Yes, that's where we learned
from one of her patients.
She did not marry your penis.
She did not marry your penis. This is when we find out that she is a sex therapist.
Did not only marry your penis.
Or sorry, a reproductive therapist.
Yes. Let's be precise. She's getting phone calls. So I gotta admit, this is 1996. She's on a cell phone. She's in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, and she's getting good range.
Yeah. In the middle of a storm.
Yeah. That's I'm impressed.
Yeah, me too.
So at this point, they start tracking another storm, a slightly larger tornado, which we'll learn later was a good F2. Right?
Yeah.
And Jonas's team, they've caught up to it, and then of course Billy, because he knows how storm thinks. He is
the storm. He's one with the storm. He
is the extreme.
Yes, he's the extreme.
He's like, it's gonna change course. Right?
Yeah.
She's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah.
And so
they hit the brakes and they reverse and they find this road. It's we're gonna go more towards the interceptor, right?
Yeah. Thanks to Rabbit.
Yes.
Their GPS. Before GPS was a thing.
Jonas decides not to follow them. I love how Eddie, his driver's like, maybe they know something we don't.
Which I can't see Eddie and not think of Tommy Boy. Because he was the dude in Tommy Boy.
Yeah. I do feel bad for Eddie in this movie.
Yes, so do I. He did not deserve what ended up happening to him.
But Anyhow, so, and then as they're going through, like, he sees that, like, they start saying, like, oh, that storm's going to change course, and they aren't going to intercept. He's like, oh. And he's like, I think they're going to intercept. And Jonas gets his binoculars out, and he looks down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bill's, he tells the team, like, you guys got to hang back. We're getting hit hard in here, right?
Yep, the hail's coming, and they get debris, and then
they're kind of crossing, like, a lake or a pond.
Mm-hmm.
and then Melissa gets a phone call. Melissa gets another phone call.
Yes. Yes, she does.
All of a sudden, you hear a moo.
Yep. And then look out the window, and there's a cow flying by. And then,
cow.
Yep, cow.
Another cow.
Nope, I think the same one.
Actually, I think that was the same. Melissa was like, I've got to go. We've got cow.
And then the one tornado splits off into two, and then three smaller tornadoes. So it's like Voltron. Once the five lion robots, were done forming Voltron, they separated into two separate lion robots. And so the tornado, once it was done being Tornado Voltron, it's separated into its three smaller components.
Yeah. They get knocked around and they pass through, and
So two of the tornadoes come in, like they're like circling around the truck and spinning it, and it's like they're like stuck. They're not like they're smaller tornadoes, so I mean they're not really much bigger than the truck itself. But yeah, so like one's at the front end of the truck, one's at the back end of it, and they're just like spinning around it, and it's spinning the truck, and Melissa's freaking out in the back seat.
Once again, they don't get Dorothy up.
No.
And then they meet back up with the team, and they're like,
this point is Dorothy 2. They had
Dorothy 1 kind of got.
Yeah, they had built 4 Dorothys total. We didn't mention that earlier. But yeah, so the first one was wrecked with the truck. The second one was in the back of Bill's truck when they were being spun around by these two tornadoes, so they didn't get to actually deploy it. But it did not get wrecked.
No.
So they still have the second one.
But so when they get back with the team, and like Rabbit noticed that they're not that far from Kita. And then it's like, we're really hungry.
And everyone's like, Meg!
He's like, we're not going to bother my aunt.
We're not. And Joe's like, we're not going to bother my aunt.
Food. And then the next thing we know, like you see this, older lady.
First off, we see this house with a yard full of like handmade windmill type things made out of metal. And then we see this older lady.
She's talking to the guy about what she wants and about like a new creation, be my guest, right?
Yeah. And
then they show up and Billy comes out, and she sees him just like, Bill! Right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, day before yesterday I was talking to Joe. I was telling her how much I miss you.
Yeah.
Right? This is an interesting scene though, because like if you catch the TV edit of this, they keep it within 2 hours. They cut out a bunch of this scene.
Okay.
Because we get a lot of backstory about Bill being the extreme during this dinner or lunch, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, but what's funny is they're in there eating steak. Like she makes them all like these giant steaks right after we saw cows flying
like
through
steak
the
eggs. And then finally, Rabbit's like, Meg, where did you get your cows from?
Yeah, and I was like, where did you get all this meat?
Did you see?
Did you see my cows out there?
My cow in the front yard. She's like, no. She's like, oh. I actually kind of believe she might slaughter her own.
I wouldn't put it past her. I would not put it past her to butcher her own cows.
And then meanwhile, Joe's getting a shower.
But, those steaks look so good, though.
They looked so good. And then I had a good ribeye tonight, by the way.
Oh, nice.
So you're kind of getting a slight, kind of a little bit of a science lesson or what's not, and then also really more of like a lesson in like Bill, Right? She had no idea he was the extreme.
Yeah.
How he walks up to a tornado and throws a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Yes. He walks up to a tornado, throws a bottle of Jack Daniels at it, and then it just takes the bottle away. And then this is where we also learned that
explained it for the scale.
Yeah, the scale, the F scale for tornadoes, and how your smaller ones are F1s, then you have F2, F3, and then F4. And then Melissa asked if there's an F5, and they're like, "Well, none of us have ever seen an F5." Well, one of us has seen an F5.
Yeah. Well, she asked, like, have any of you ever seen an F5?
Yeah.
And they all kind of stop.
And just one of us. And
they're they talk about, like, they say, like, good, an F4, like, we'll relocate your house.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then that's what really cuts.
And that's where it's
Joe.
That's where it's heavily implied that the tornado at the beginning of the movie was an F5, and that Joe was the one that saw an F5.
And then, it cuts back to, like, Joe, like, and she's getting dressed, and now Meg comes up, and she's like, no, he didn't keep his part of the bargain, to grow old with you, right? And, she's saying, he's still there. He's, she's kind of encouraging her to, like, they can still make things right, and then all back downstairs again, and they get the report of another tornado touching down, that they have to leave quickly, right? So they run off, and, that's...
Leave Meg to clean up after all of them.
Yeah. But it seems like she's used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's got a dog. The dog can really help with a lot of that.
Yes, because golden retrievers are so good at cleaning.
And so, they're trying to find the best route for this. And this is where like Rabbit's skills really come in, because he finds a road that travels through a cornfield.
Yes.
That's not marked at all. He's like, I love how, like, the whole question, like,
Rabbit finds the rabbit trail.
He's like, Rabbit is good. Rabbit is wise.
Yeah. Rabbit finds the rabbit trail. And
he's like, we should be coming on the highway right past here. And they're like, I don't see it. And then they literally drive out onto the highway.
And then they have debris, and a tricycle gets lodged in the windshield.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's once they break off, because then they have to go over that hill to find that tornado.
Oh, yeah.
Like, right? Because that's when they turn off. Like, Bill looks at it. He's like, oh, no, I think we got to go that direction. That's like, and Rabbit's confused. It's like, this is like Bob's road. And they go, and, like, they keep wondering where the tornado's going to be. He's like, I think it's going to show its face over that hill.
Yeah.
And then it does. And this is the first time where they really try to set the sensors.
Yes.
Right.
So a tricycle gets lodged in the windshield, and they get hail and all this. So they stop in the road in the path of the tornado, and so Joe is driving, and while Joe's driving, Bill climbs through the back window of the truck into the bed, and he's setting up Dorothy.
Yep. And then that's when you talk about the debris, and then finally, once it gets all set, they stop. Right. They get it out. They get it onto the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then they back it up a little bit. They're getting ready to film it. And then there's more debris. Like, they basically get this large tree branch.
It comes in and it knocks Dorothy over.
It just knocks Dorothy over, and they're, like, disappointed. Right. But then the branch, it kind of continues on down the road and
gets lodged under the truck.
Itself under the truck.
And so they're trying to get off of this branch because it picked up the rear wheels.
Yeah.
So when Dorothy got knocked over, then all the sensors just got spread out across the road.
Just scattered all over the road. And, like, obviously there's no one else around right now. Massive tornado. It's an F3, right? So they're trying to back up, and all of a sudden it disappears, right?
Yeah. And,
like, they're wondering where it is, and, like, it falls off, and everyone's, like, confused, because the rest of the team, they're probably like a half mile down the road or so, right? They're close, but they're more towards safety. And so he's like, the cone of silence.
The cone of silence. Every time I hear that, I think he gets smart.
And then, and Bill's looking up. He's like, man, I think it's backtracking. It's going to come back, right?
And then it comes down.
And it does, of course. And they really have to, like, drive away from it. And they get far enough away.
So they get unlodged from the tree branch.
Yeah.
And they're trying to drive away. And they find out that this tornado is not just a regular tornado. It's a jumper.
Yeah. Yes.
So it like touches down and then pops back up and then touches down a little while later and then pops back up. So it's like it's jumping down the road.
And so, I mean, they eventually get clear of it, but, it's raining, and Joe now like, kind of in safety, she wants to go back, cover all the sensors, right? And Bill's just saying, no, we need to get out of here.
Yeah, well, she was trying to recover the sensors before the tornado came to them. She was trying to get it all packed in there so that they could deploy it. Right. And then he's like, we need to get out of here because the tornado's coming.
That's right. You're right. And then she's like, you've never seen it, miss this house, miss that house, right?
And then
she's getting emotional about it. It's understandable. And obviously the radio is picking this up and she hears it and she starts crying about it. Because then Bill starts saying, like, you're missing what's right in front of you. Like, me. Yeah,
me. I'm right in front of you. And Melissa's hearing all this over the radio.
So, they eventually do get out of there, safety, and the whole caravan drives off. Now the sun's setting and kind of like somber, and like they're kind of set up shop at this like motel. It's next to a drive-through.
Yes, next to a drive-through movie theater.
The Shining.
Yes.
Like when it cuts to it, it's a scene where Danny is riding his tricycle through the hallways, and then he sees the girls. That's my first ever exposure to The Shining, was watching this movie.
Mine too.
And Bill wants to order some coffee. Joe's going to do some too, and
because Joe goes to order coffee for the whole team, and then Bill comes over to order 2 coffees. I'm guessing for him and Melissa.
And they start talking, and Bill's thinking, like, oh yeah, the pack's probably too light. He's just kind of talking as like colleagues, and like which is understandable because like if that's too it has to withstand heavy winds. Like you could easily get over.
Yeah, I mean if the stray tree branch comes by, it'll knock it over.
And then you're screwed.
Yeah,
all that work. So meanwhile, it cuts back, and like Melissa is listening to the weather broadcast on the TV. She's playing around with her engagement ring, and it kind of goes back and forth. And then before this, they also had that scene that goes back to like the severe storm center, right? And they look at it, it's like, oh, if those two cells collide,
yeah,
right. And that's where it cuts into the
it's just like just like any movie with natural disasters. If those two cells collide, all hell will break loose. The perfect storm.
Oh, Shooter McGavin. Anyway, so he only exists in Perfect Storm for that reason. It does not make any sense to me. Anyway, so they're talking, and like the stand, the little concession stand at the theater has TV also, right? And I see even before that, you see the power go out. It goes to the snow and the TV in the motel. Melissa, and she turns it off.
Yeah. So interesting thing about this scene that I noticed. So TV goes to the snow, the black and white fuzzies.
It goes to like the test pattern actually.
Which for the younger listeners, when TVs would go out back in the 90s and earlier, then there was a test pattern that would go. It wouldn't just cut out like it does now. But anyway, so TV goes out and the wind picks up. You see the curtains. She has the window open. You see the curtains blowing.
Right. You see the curtains.
And then it shows. Yeah. So here's what I noticed. So then, like right after the curtains start blowing, then it shows an exterior of the motel, like coming outside of her window, and you see her curtains blowing from the outside. You see them inside. But the room right next to hers also has one of the windows open, but the curtains are completely still.
I don't know.
The wind is only blowing into her room. I mean, I would get it if the other room, if the window was closed, but the other room had 2 windows. One of them was open. I just thought it was funny.
Anyway,
but
that is strange. No, and then we see them at the concession stand. They got the TV too, and that cuts out. Right, Bill notices that. Right, and he steps back, and like you can see the winds like blowing there now, and like Melissa comes out, and Dusty's been monitoring the radar and everything, and he's just checking in on everything, and then it's like this is probably like this is a scene. This scene in particular, I think it's the climactic scene is probably like again, there's a lot of cool things to it. Like this is the one that really gets intense, really features like
Yeah.
This is the scene
Yes.
for the movie, in my opinion.
Yes.
It's actually probably one that's probably the most accurate of kind of the entire experience of just being kind of somewhere and all of a sudden, like, it hits.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't really see a whole lot of this tornado. We more see the aftermath of it.
It's nighttime, right? And all of a sudden it's like, it's already here. It's like, it's like Bill starts screaming to get, people to get in, and like Jo, she's kind of curious, but she's like transfixed.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're trying to rush. So Bill and everybody else on the team is trying to rush to get everybody to safety.
Right, and there's this like large like garage, kind of like mechanics garage there, like probably really like they would like repair like like a tractor
a partially underground facility.
And like you're gonna have there's always like pits where like you work on vehicles, right? So like
so they go in there, and the pits are below the ground level, but the rest of the building is not.
Not the most ideal place because there's obviously a lot of debris.
But they're at a drive-in movie theater, so there's not really a whole lot of places for them to go.
Yeah, and I guess there's like a little cellar, within the concession stand also. But obviously, it's not going to fit everybody, plus the moviegoers, right? And finally, Jo wakes up. She starts slamming on the thing and telling the like two girls that are working there. Then you actually do hear like the tornado siren.
Yes.
And you can hear a tornado siren going on. And then you start seeing everyone that's watching the movie getting out of their cars, they're running in. Like, I gotta think some of those people got picked up in that. I can't imagine they all got picked up.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, well, I think
somebody died. Somebody died in that tornado.
It's destroying the screen. It's Jack Nicholson where he's like, it's the Here's Johnny scene, right?
Yeah.
And there had been some other scenes through part of this where it gets like elapsed. Because like there's a good 45 minutes of movie between Danny riding that tricycle.
Yeah. And Jack taking the axe to the bathroom door.
And it's basically like maybe not even 10 minutes of movie time.
Yeah.
In here.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's some time elapsed in there.
And then the next thing I love is as they're trying to go in, Jeremy Davies all of a sudden shows up. Like, he's part of the team that, like, was he in any other part of this movie?
He was in the beginning of it.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah, Jeremy Davies was in the beginning of it. He wasn't in much of the rest of it.
He was.
But he was in the beginning of it.
You're right. You're correct. He decides that he just is going to, like, crouch down in front of the passenger seat of his truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jo.
Yeah, Jo goes and basically drags him out of the truck to go into the auto shop with everybody else. But, yeah, so they all cram into the pit in the auto shop, and all the trucks are getting picked up and thrown around. And
all the windows are stopped, like, break, and then you get this, even, like, the movie theater sign has, like, the arrow, the big neon sign. Mm-hmm. That gets picked up, it gets thrown through,
they narrowly escape death.
There's a hose that gets, knocked loose, and it's flailing around, right? One guy captures it, but then sometimes the debris, it gets flung out towards it.
It was a hubcap. A hubcap flew up and sliced him across the front of the forehead.
Across the forehead. It's not, it's deep enough that it needs like medical attention. It's not very serious, but they all survive, right?
No, but Jo sits there and like applies direct pressure to it.
Yes.
To try to stop the bleeding.
Then,
but it's not like a life-threatening injury.
Obviously, she's screaming through all of it, and then they get out, and then they're seeing all of the damage. And you got, I guess, the other people coming out from the concession stand, and the cops are there, right? And everyone's trying to catch their breath, right? That's a pretty intense thing that just happened, right? And then they all of a sudden, Dusty's still kind of looking at, all of the equipment they have to track the storms. They still have that and it's still operating, right?
Yeah.
And then he sees that.
Because only a handful of their trucks were thrown around and destroyed in the tornado.
Yeah.
Dusty's bus is still working. It's still there. It had all the equipment on it. And Bill's truck is still functional. And
it seems like the direct path of it is really more of a lot with all the cars watching the movie, not kind of by the hotel. Right.
Yeah. And
so then he sees that the tornado is supposed to continue on and make a direct path through Kita, where Meg lives, right? And so they decide they need to go and help out.
They need to go and make sure Meg's okay.
Yeah. I mean, they know that they're not going to outrun the tornado.
No.
but
they need to get there.
They're going to need help afterwards.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's when Melissa announces that she's not going to be back because Bill tells her, go back and I'll meet you at the hotel. And he's like, I won't be
Yeah. She's like, I
She
won't
breaks
be
up with
there.
him, right? And she's nice about the breakup.
Yeah, she is. And he takes it very well for the rest of the movie. I mean, but also he's got a lot more on his mind, so he kind of has to push that to the back. So I mean, it's understandable. Some people might think that he gets over it way too easily, but no, he has a lot going on, and it's one of those situations where he kind of has to force it to the back of his mind and think about it later.
His everything, that little flame's been rekindled also for Joe. Yeah, so they say their goodbyes, and she's a little bit sad about it, but she's not super sad. I guess it seems like she realizes that it's probably something that would never work out, and she realizes he's still his heart's really in the chasing being the extreme.
Yeah, especially since this entire movie, it was a shock to her that he was the extreme. She didn't think that she didn't know what went into storm chasing.
She thought it was a metaphor.
Yeah. So, I mean, this whole day was a huge shock to her, finding out what he really did, for his job.
So they go off and get to Wakita, and then we cut to Wakita, and she's watching the TV show in bed, and she's got her windows open. All of a sudden, she hears all her stuff
rattling,
right? And then it basically cuts, and then get back to the team, and they're driving through, and all of a sudden you see the Wakita town sign going over, and they're driving by, and all this destruction.
Yeah. Every building is just leveled.
We get to Joe, they get to Meg's house, and it's still kind of standing, but it's definitely off its foundation.
Which those who have never, been the Midwest, never been in tornado country, that's how it looks after a tornado. If a tornado rips through town, that is how it looks. I remember, just a little aside, back several years ago when that big tornado hit Joplin, Missouri.
Let's say the Joplin one, yeah.
So my friend and I, that night, so the tornado hit, and then that night we hopped in my truck and we drove to Joplin to help out, to volunteer with Red Cross and stuff like that. And so we spent the entire next day in Joplin driving through, and the place was leveled. We were driving down streets. There were people, there was a family sitting out on their front porch with a giant oak tree just laying on top of their house. And they're just sitting out on the front porch, just with this blank look on their face, being like, we don't have a house anymore.
Yeah, no.
We drove by, a little strip shopping center that was just completely leveled, just flat. Yeah, that's how a town that's been hit by a tornado looks. Yeah. So if you're someone who lives somewhere where tornadoes don't happen, that's an accurate depiction of it. Yeah.
No, it will look like if you've ever seen a house that's been exploded. That's basically, it looks like a bomb has gone off, is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Talk about total destruction. So, yeah, but they get to Meg's house, right? And it's still standing. You can tell, it's definitely ready to collapse.
Yeah. Well, it's already mostly collapsed.
Go in and they find
Meg's house is already mostly collapsed. It's just, it's holding on by a few planks.
And it will collapse very soon.
Yeah. So they kind of climb up the side of the house and go in through the window, and they find her in the basement with the dog. Yeah. So she was able to get the dog down there too.
She barely had enough time. The sirens went off, and then she was able to get down, very quickly. But all of a sudden, things are shifting in the house, the TV. It's only
it's still plugged in, but it starts to fall, and it's only held on by the cord in the wall.
Right.
And it's directly above Meg's head, because she's laying down there. She was part of the house collapsed on her. She's got a beam across her.
Yeah.
And so they got to go down there and get that beam off of her. And so they're trying to get that off of her. And meanwhile, the TV is just dangling by its cord that's still plugged into the wall, but it's coming loose. So, they get the beam off of her. They get her out of the way just in time for the TV to fall right where her head was. And I mean, it's a big TV. TVs in the 90s were heavy.
Oh yeah, no. If you're not pulling up, there were no flat screen.
They were tube TVs. They had big heavy components inside them. I mean, they're not as heavy as 70s and 80s TVs were, but it's not like a giant console TV. But
they were still heavy.
Yeah.
Oh, those are fun things to move.
Yeah.
Anyway, they get out in time along with her dog.
Yep. Well, no, they get out. They get out, and then she's like, "Go get the dog," because the dog was still inside the house. So Bill went back in to get the dog.
Gets out in time,
and he gets the dog out just in time. As soon as he gets out of there, the house collapses.
Yeah. So and then we see, and also they have her in the back of an ambulance, and Joe saw like wrist and has a concussion.
Yeah,
right.
But other than that, she's fine. She's not in any mortal danger.
And then, they're looking at that and like they hear about, F5 is like starting to form. Joe wants to stay. Mag's like, no, your entire life has been lived around this.
Yeah.
It's going to happen to someone else is what she says. Like she's trying to say like, this is kind of like your purpose. And they're going to do it. And then, before they leave, she sees
all these windmills. All of Meg's windmills.
All of a sudden realizes, oh, this is how we get.
Yeah. I know how to make Dorothy
beyond
fly.
just having it be sturdy. You also had to have something
for the wind to catch.
Actually stay in the air.
Yeah. You need something for the wind to catch and keep the sensors up. So they get a hold of all the aluminum cans they can.
Which is crazy. I don't know how they do this.
I don't either.
Storm forming.
The storm forming. And so while they're driving toward the storm, everybody else is in Dusty's bus.
It's okay to ignore this plot.
Cutting up all of these aluminum cans and attaching them to every one of the hundreds of sensors in the last two Dorothys. And somehow they get them all done in time. So they get out there.
Now it's like,
and they dump them all into the Dorothys.
I guess
and
it's the morning. I don't know. And like the thing for this last one, it really is basically in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like there's obviously there's a tractor shop and farmhouses and a few other things. It's like it's basically in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they get the tractor for a while, right? And it's like do they blow over the Dorothy 3 before all the debris? Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah. So they go to try to set up Dorothy 3 and they get it set up and does it get tipped over too?
It does get tipped over because it's still too light. Because they're gonna have to. They put it in the truck for the last one, right? So this also gets knocked over. Yeah, this gets knocked over as well.
Yeah, it gets knocked over because is that when they ultimately figure that it's too light?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they talk about it earlier, but they realize it's still too light. Like they still need to figure out a way to base it better, right? So and so then. After that, they realize they can't salvage it. Obviously,
yeah, they can't salvage it.
Somehow they still change their path and try to still stay ahead of the tornado. But then that's when all of a sudden it starts picking up tractors and all these combines.
Also Jonas is also chasing this tornado.
So we haven't seen him in a while, but.
Yeah, we haven't seen Jonas in a while, but he and his crew are there on a farther off road closer to the tornado itself. They're kind of going parallel to the tornado. And so they're calling him, telling him when you deploy your sensors, you need to anchor it to something. Right. It's too light.
But he doesn't really listen.
But he doesn't listen. He thinks they're just trying to throw him off and, feed him false information. So he just sort of blows it off. And so then as he's driving on the road, they start noticing, Bill and Joe start noticing all the signs that this tornado is going to turn.
Yeah.
So then they start calling him, telling him, you need to get off that road. You need to get away from there because the tornado is going to turn your direction.
And the driver, Eddie, he's like, you should listen.
Yeah. He's like, you should listen to them. And he's like, no, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just trying to take all the glory for themselves.
He turns off the radio. And then after that, this is like a radio tower. Then all of a sudden, it got picked up. Goes directly through the windshield and crushes Eddie.
Just goes right through Eddie's chest. And then the truck gets picked up by the tornado and thrown off and blows up. And there goes Jonas.
Yep. This entire crew is watching it.
Yeah.
Including Jake Busey.
Yes, including Jake Busey in his small cameo appearance in this movie.
But then, it continues, and all of a sudden they have to drive off, and that's when they start dodging different debris. Mm-hmm.
Tractors,
combines, a house that's rolling over.
Yep. Which then just driving through the house. They drive through the house.
And then, yeah, they avoid the obstacles. That's all fine and good. And they drive into like
in the
the
cornfield
middle of a cornfield. And,
with in
this
the
scene,
direct
this
path
is the scene.
of the tornado. So
This scene was not filmed in Oklahoma. This scene was filmed in Iowa.
okay,
Iowa has a lot of corn.
yes, Iowa has a lot of corn. And
They
Nebraska has
get
a lot of corn. But yeah, so they stop the truck directly in the path of the tornado. Joe sets Dorothy for a lot quicker than Bill did earlier.
Yes.
She just reaches back through the window and flips a couple switches and it's good. Bill had to climb out there, flip those same switches, then go around the other side, hit a button, go around the other side, hit all this stuff. So did they prep the rest of it before they left? So all they need to do is flip those switches or what? But anyway,
that could make sense.
Again,
anyway,
not important. Just an observation. But yeah, so they stop the truck, get out of it, and well, they don't quite stop the truck, but they set the cruise control so they can jump out of the truck. I don't know if they ever
actually have the conversation that the best way to do this is to anchor it in the truck.
Yeah, I don't know that they ever actually had that conversation on screen. I mean, we had them calling Jonas and telling him you need to anchor it.
Yeah. But I think
it was kind of
obvious that they realized
they did share a look earlier when they realized that they need to anchor it, but I don't think everything was actually said out loud. But they shared a look that sort of implied that they're going to have to anchor it to the truck.
They jump out of the truck.
Yeah, they jump out of the truck and watch the truck go into the tornado.
Yes.
It gets picked up, just says Dorothy's opening up, and then they get confirmation from their crew, from their team, that it worked, and the sensors are all getting all readings.
Types of information.
And, they're getting all the readings they've ever dreamed of from the inside of the tornado. So they're like, yay, we did it, we did it. Oh no, there's an F5 tornado coming right at us, and we're out in the open. So they run.
Yeah, they start seeing, understanding, oh no, it's going to move again, do this. And it starts moving towards...
So there's a farmhouse nearby.
And now they have to run away on foot.
Yes. Luckily, there's a farmhouse nearby with a barn. And so they run,
yes.
they get
horses.
to the barn.
I love how
yes,
I
and
love
horses,
the horses
yes.
running around.
Yes.
They don't get picked up.
No, they don't. Because they're not cows. Only cows get picked up by tornadoes.
They go into the barn and they look at it. I don't know why they're surprised that there's a bunch of sharp objects in this barn, but they look at it they're like, hell no.
Yeah. So
because projectile sets and sickles and other
so it's just like this barn is like it's right out of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like there's just blades everywhere, blades of all kinds. All over the place, hanging from the rafters, hanging on the walls, in the middle of the floor. It's not somewhere you want to be in the middle of a tornado.
Yeah, no.
So
remember the guy that got hit by a hubcap?
It would be a lot worse than that. So they get out of the barn and they go and they find another little outbuilding, a little pump house, and there's these pipes
must reach at least
30 feet. Yeah, so he's like, these pipes go at least 30 feet underground. So if we attach ourselves to these, then we should be okay. We should be able to ride it out. Meanwhile, we see the family that lives in the farmhouse running toward their storm shelter.
Yeah.
Why didn't they just go and try to get into there with them? But yeah, so they find thick leather straps hanging on the wall, and they attach themselves to these pipes. And the tornado rips through the barn that they were just in, which would then imply that there's a bunch of blades flying around in this tornado. And then it runs right through the pump house they're in, which again, if it just went through the barn, you would think there would at least be some of those blades still flying around. Because there were hundreds of them in there.
No.
Or at least some of the Dorothy sensors.
No, that's true. We don't see any of them. Maybe Bill's truck is still in there, too.
That too. Maybe. But anyway, so it passes right over them. So
I know at some point the debris does get tossed somewhere.
Yeah.
But some of the debris sticks with the tornado. That's what the tornado is. It's a bunch of swirling debris.
Yeah. So, the tornado, passes right through the pump house that they're in. So they're in the middle of the tornado attached to these pipes, looking up and seeing the inside of the tornado, something that nobody has ever seen before.
Well, And live to tell about it.
Yeah, and live to tell about it. But yeah, so it passes across them, and everything gets calm, and the storm's over, and then the family comes out and sees them
out of the
storm cellar and sees them tied to the pipes.
The dad be like, "What the? Who are these people?
Yeah,
get off my lawn!"
And then Joe notices it didn't take the house. His F5 tornado blew through this property and left the house.
And then the rest of the team comes driving up. The Goo Goo Dolls are playing.
Yep.
And they start talking about how they had to do all this research and all this, and then they kiss. Right?
Yeah, they kiss.
Seems like the end of
and then you get the helicopter shot of the field and all the destruction, and the team standing there celebrating that they got all the data they were hoping for, and that Bill and Joe have a new lease on their relationship. It's implied they're going to get back together and go and do their storm chasing together again.
Yep. And
then the credits roll.
It's again, it's what comes in a little over 2 hours and does what it needs to do.
Yeah. It's a good movie.
I can see why some people are like, okay, yeah, it's maybe logically it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, but
go get this and go get that. But
it's a movie. You're not always supposed to use logic when you're watching a movie. Especially when you're watching a movie about natural disasters and tornadoes and whatnot. It's an entertaining movie. It's fun. Yeah. It's a good movie. It's an enjoyable watch, and I would recommend watching it if you haven't seen it. But yeah, it's not one.
Good movie.
It's not one to really use a lot of logic while watching.
It's a good late night movie.
Yeah, maybe watch this one. Do a double feature with this one and Night of the Twisters.
You appreciate this one a lot more.
Yes, you will.
Because this is definitely well done. And there is the plot, right? It's supposed to be about giving Dorothy the fly, and Dorothy flies in the end.
Yes, so. Dorothy flies in the end. If Dorothy had flown at the beginning of the movie, there wouldn't have been a movie.
Would not have been a movie.
And they can't mention that they have 4 Dorothys without going through all 4 of them until they have one left, and that last one has to fly, and it would be a disappointing ending if it didn't.
But I wonder if Twisters is going to be about Joe's dad actually coming back somehow.
Yeah. Maybe he successfully rode that tornado
into the future.
Yes. Maybe the eye in the center of the tornado is like a portal to the future. Maybe it's a fissure.
It's a fissure.
That's set to one specific time, like in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah, it's Twister, and let us know what you think about it. I don't know. I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I enjoy it.
It's still, I don't know. It's hard not like the Bill Paxton. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's hard not to like anything Bill Paxton is in.
And it's like one of the few movies where he's actually like a leading role, at least a kind of more made like big budget movie.
Yeah,
I mean, I know he's like part of everything with Apollo 13. But like that's the Tom Hanks show, and even Kevin Bacon's a bigger draw on him than that.
Yep.
So, and again, Helen Hunt at the time was
Helen Hunt was huge.
Yeah, after Mad About You, like she wasn't that concerned about having to do big roles. She was just careful and hasn't worked a lot.
Yeah,
but she works well in this movie.
She does. Yeah.
It's like
they have great chemistry.
Movies.
Yeah, Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton had great chemistry in this movie. But
and Alan Ruck. I mean,
Alan Ruck, you can't go wrong with him.
Alan.
You can't go wrong with Alan Ruck.
He's so like these Speed. Like I love his character in Speed.
Yes. Oh darn.
He's got a map in that movie too.
Yeah, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. Come on. Philip Seymour Hoffman was brilliant in this movie.
No, and he just really just runs with the character.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have thought that when I first saw it the first few times. But the more you watch it, you realize, these are really having a lot of fun with this. And he seems to be like a filmographer, like he's filming it. the tornadoes. But it's funny because then there's also these parts of it like, oh yeah, he can be serious when he realizes like Meg's in danger, right? So it's kind of darkly humorous.
Yeah.
What Todd Field, who ends up becoming a director for his movie like In the Bedroom and Little Children, he's also in this. It's an interesting cast. What's his name? He's also on Genesis team, and he was in Lost season 5. And Bill Lost.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name right now.
Is it Patrick Fisher?
Yes.
Fischler.
We also talked about Jeremy Davies.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk a lot about Melissa River, Jamie Getz, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you know, Still Standing kind of became her big role, and then Lois Smith as Meg, right? You know.
Yeah. I mean, Carrie Elwes was great as Jonas. But
it's kind of funny. Like, you don't always, he plays a variety of roles. Like, I know later on, like, he does play more of, like, you see him more of a villain role later in his career, obviously. Yeah. But at that time, like, that was kind of a newer thing.
At that time, I mean, he was Wesley in Princess Bride. He was Robin Hood in he was Robin Hood in Men in Tights. But yeah, so he hadn't really played a whole lot of villains.
After this, he's Jerry in Liar, which he's just a square.
Yeah, he's not necessarily a bad guy in there. He's just the new husband.
But yeah, he's good. It's limited time, but he has fun with the role.
Yeah, and this was our first Jan de Bont movie. Yeah,
because we haven't done Speed.
Yeah.
And we talked about Speed 2 Cruise Control. I'm not that concerned about that one. And we have done The Haunting. I don't think we will do The Haunting either.
Yeah, probably not. But we will definitely do Speed.
Another one that would be interesting is that he was a producer on Equilibrium.
Ooh, we are going to do that movie one of these days. So, that's a good movie. But
and Minority Report.
Yeah, we should do that one too.
And there is a movie later that we will definitely be doing where he was cinematographer. That's Die Hard.
Yes.
He filmed Die Hard.
Yeah. And
Weapon 3. Dave Russo. But yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, before he became a director, he was doing a lot of cinematography.
Yeah. So yeah, that's Twister. If you want to follow us more closely, we're on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram and Threads. It is Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure, all one word. The "and" is spelled out. It's not an ampersand like it is in the name of the podcast. But then we are also on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. I
think it's really only X now. We want to keep going.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be X now. But anyway, so that's RNT Cinematic. So RANDT Cinematic. And then on Letterboxd, we are Cine Adventure or Cine Adventure, CINE Adventure. And I think that is all of our socials right now. But we also, if you want to send us an email, it's Rob and Tony's Cinematic Adventure at gmail.com. Once again, the "and" is spelled out. It's not an ampersand because you can't really do that in an email address. But anyway, let us know what you think. Go on your favorite podcast app, wherever you listen. Give us a good review. Give us a good rating if you enjoy what you're hearing. And, let us know what.
Or if you just want to tell us that Twister sucks.
Yeah. You're entitled to your opinion, no matter how wrong it might be. But,
tell away.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
That's your opinion, and it's anyway.
But the ratings are what allows us to
the ratings and the engagement.
Yes, the ratings and engagement are what decide where we fall in the search and all that stuff. And in order to get us out to a wider audience, we would very much appreciate it if you give us some good ratings. But that's all completely up to you if you want to do that or not. But anyway, that is where you can reach us in those places, and let us know what you thought of Twister. If you loved it, if you hated it, whatever, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, next up, we are going to be getting into since summer is upon us, we're going to be getting into a summer blockbuster series. So we're going to, all throughout the summer, we're going to be doing a bunch of summer blockbusters from over the years.
We're basically going to try to define this as Memorial Day through the end of August.
Yeah.
So... Yeah. I mean, like Labor Day, but the Labor Day is they dump crappy movies on Labor Day.
Yeah,
there's no plot.
So basically, blockbusters released in that time frame.
It's talking, yeah. And so we're gonna start with the one that really started all the summer blockbusters.
Yeah,
Jaws.
Yeah, the very first summer blockbuster, Jaws.
For me, might be, and we'll talk about it. Is one of the most perfect summer movies there is.
Yeah.
So I think it's the most appropriate that we can start with.
Yeah, it is very appropriate to start with, because of that. And also, I mean, why not? If we're starting a summer blockbuster series, why not start with the first summer blockbuster? It makes perfect sense. But anyway, so we will see you next time for Jaws.